Hey guys, how are you all? My name is Rudransh, and today our group is going to talk about one of the most dangerous and inevitable events that our Earth is facing, which is climate change. It is an ongoing process which impacts severely not only us but even our surroundings. In this presentation, specifically, we are going to focus on the impacts of climate change on coral reef ecosystem and precisely on the Great Barrier Reef. So the GBR is the world's largest coral reef ecosystem, which is located on the eastern coast of Australia in the Pacific Ocean, and it stretches from northern Australia till the middle of the continent, and it is 2,300 kilometers long. It comprises 10% of the world's total coral reef ecosystem, so is an integral part of the ecosystem. Since the 18th century, the amount of carbon dioxide which is released into the atmosphere by human activities has increased significantly. And as we all know, CO2 is a greenhouse gas. So it traps the sun's radiation, which is reflected back by the Earth's surface, hence increasing the atmospheric temperature. And as we all know, as the atmospheric temperature increases, the temperature of ocean surface also increases. And this leads to some of the stress events such as tropical cyclones and uneven rainfall patterns, melting of the polar ice caps, which leads to increase in the level of ocean, and even coral bleaching. Now, how, you may ask? So when the temperature increases above a certain level, corals expel the microscopic algae, which gives them pigmentation, and this process is known as coral bleaching. Bleached corals are actually at the risk of dying out because their skeletons are exposed. Another factor which here comes into consideration is ocean acidification. So, as we know, oceans are the largest carbon sinks on our planet. So, they absorb CO2, forming carbonic acid, which is going to react with the skeletons, which are made up of CaCO3 or calcium carbonate. In the last 5 years, we have experienced three major coral bleaching events, and the total reefs on the planet have reduced by as much as 50%. Now, to discuss more about the human impacts of this process, I'm going to invite Saran to speak up.
According to the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, about 25% of marine life depend on the coral reefs for their survival. It is home to thousands of marine animals and over half of the mangrove species. This makes the coral reefs an integral part of the marine ecosystem. Nevertheless, humans are also dependent on the coral reefs and therefore on the Great Barrier Reef in specific in more than one way. The GBR is an economic powerhouse contributing to more than $6.4 billion each year to the Australian economy and about 64,000 full-time jobs. Hence, any damage would lead to loss of jobs for thousands of people and a major economic loss. Secondly, thousands of fishermen are dependent on the fish that they catch near the coral reefs for their livelihood. So they will have to rely on other sources for their survival. The reef acts as an underwater shield protecting the shore against the surging waves. About 62 million people live less than 33 feet above sea level and less than 2 miles from a coral reef. However, if the corals die, this huge underwater protective wall will collapse and tsunamis will become a common norm. Now, I'd like to bring Alexander to discuss about the actions that we can take regarding this issue.
Okay, thank you. So even though it has become almost impossible to save the coral reefs, there still are some actions that we can take to protect and preserve them from the further damages. Firstly, make sure that you always dispose the garbage properly. Marine debris can be detrimental for corals and other marine animals. Hence, we should always segregate the waste, try to minimize it and throw it in proper bin, and never throw it in the water streams. Secondly, minimize the use of chemical fertilizers. Chemical fertilizer can easily get in your water body, which carries them into the ocean, which is almost like a poison for the marine animals. Lastly, the last thing that we can do as individuals is to raise our voice against coal mining in the state of Queensland in Eastern Australia, as mining can release harmful gases into the atmosphere, such as carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, and etc. This leads to ocean acidification and global warming. Also, water bodies near the quarry get polluted. Hence, it is very much necessary to raise our voice and share this message. Hence, we can conclude that the Great Barrier Reef is significant for many aspects of our environment, as many of the marine inhabitants are dependent on it for their survival. Also, it is significant for the human population, as it creates many job opportunities in the region and helps many people feed their families. However, with climate change, it is endangered. And if we want Great Barrier Reef to be beneficial for us, we have to do our best to preserve it and minimize the climate change consequences. Thank you for your attention, and please let us know if you have any questions or suggestions regarding this topic. Goodbye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Goodbye.
Bye.